Hey there. This show is The Right Stuff. I am Cooper from Telepathic Bunny Comics, and I have my friend from Eudaimonia Comics. Is that it?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Uh, so you want to give a little bit of bio for the people? Just how,
My name
whatever you
is
feel comfortable sharing.
JP. I started Eudaimonia Comics a couple years ago, just doing indie comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fresh out of college, trying to find um, my voice in the world. Um,
Okay.
come from a bit of a classic literature background, and I found that
Mm-hmm.
comics were just a really easy fit for my kind of writing style.
Ah,
Um,
right.
I'm a bit of a minimalist writer, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I enjoy the process of letting people dazzle the eyes with
Mm-hmm.
tightly written words
Right.
and telling
Right.
stories.
Cool. Awesome. 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 So why eudaimonia?
So
That's
in
not exactly a common word. I know it's
yeah,
Latin.
I'm trying to force it on people. It's been a couple of years now, and it's not really working. But
Right,
eudaimonia
right.
is a word from ancient Greek philosophy. Basically
Yeah.
means the good life, the life that is worth
Mm-hmm.
going through the inevitable trials of life to still emerge with on the other side. So
Joie
um,
de vivre, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. As a redneck, I do know a little bit of French. Uh,
yeah.
anyway, yeah. You first kind of hit my radar a few years ago when I was mentioning that I was not seeing the quality of writing that I was in projects I was getting from first time creators, and it was concerning me. And and you're like, oh, well, you want to see some writing, and then you drop me a PDF for eudaimonia. So I didn't get back to you at that time because I'm gonna be quite honest. I didn't really know how to take the book. It took me several readings through to kind of understand because you're not a person I, in writing in speech writing they call it putting the cookies on the bottom shelf,
Mm,
or putting something that simplified enough to it's accessible to like everybody. and
mm,
and your writing tends to be very concept laden. You're a conceptual thinker, and you like big ideas, and you like big, and and it's not, but when you do that, you not only do you have a depth to your writing, but it's not always like as like easy listening.
yeah, yeah.
it's it's like the difference between prog metal and pop. You know what I'm saying?
We need to be
Uh,
careful because we can now talk about prog metal for that'll eat up the whole show.
what's your favorite prog group?
Oh, I don't know where you would classify them, but between the
Uh-huh.
buried and me,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
my cat's name is
Brian, you and
his name
Brian
is
Urso
Bitaban after
need to
between the
have a
buried and me.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a big prog guy. Uh, I think his group is prog metal.
nice.
Yeah, that's not always accessible either, right?
Yeah, exactly.
uh, but anyway, so when you've written a new project. It's called Noirlem. We'll be talking about that later. I've got your campaign up. We'll take a look. Um, so I got the discussions. Every I try to ask the same questions to everybody, so the variety of answers kind of like becomes
Mm.
like the show. You already sent me your answers, but I'll just
Yeah,
this
I
man right here.
misunderstood
I
the
tell you
homework.
what, he knows. He's very definitive. He knows exactly because I got my answers to all my questions back in like I'd say 5 minutes later. So I thought this would be a discussion. This would be a good
I
discussion to
I thought it
have.
was like a getting to know you thing. Like, hey, why don't you answer these, and
Right,
that way I
right.
know what to ask. And I was like, oh no, that was actually Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know these things ahead of time, so I can ask a little bit about your answers. But the first writing that you read that made you want to learn how, you wrote about the death of the salesman. You want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so okay, so I was homeless when I was young for a while. And so it
Oh,
took me a
okay.
little bit of time to kind of like get going in life. So I didn't go back to
Willie
college
Loman would
until
appeal to you, right?
yeah, exactly. I didn't get to go back to
Yeah.
college until I was like 30, about 30-ish.
Oh. Oh, okay.
And I went
Okay.
back to school to become a math teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my math professor, and this is like a dinky little community college, my math
Right.
professor was literally, it was his last term and then he was retiring. So he did not
Oh.
care about anything at all. And then I
Oh.
took an English
Wow.
class, and the teacher there was just this sweet old woman that was just genuinely excited. Like her passion was
Mm-hmm.
just, there was nothing,
Right.
nothing dishonest about it. And and it was the first time that I had really sat down and looked at a piece of literature in a long time. And it was
Yeah.
Death of a Salesman. I love the book.
Mm-hmm.
I did my analysis of it. And when it was over, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, do you want to go? You'd be really good for like the honors program
Oh.
and kind of an accelerated study."
Yeah.
And that was like the first time in my life that somebody really believed in me to do anything.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of grabbed onto that and was just off to the races. It was just, that was just like, whew. And I just
You heard the
started like,
music.
yeah. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so, I did the honors program, I did all that. And when I went on
Mm-hmm.
to um, the next phase, not community college, like an actual school, I was
Yeah.
just like deeply entrenched in literature. And so that was, I look back as that was the kind of piece that really got me to think about the mechanics of storytelling and how all of that works, how it can be broken down
Right.
and
Right.
reassembled into something new for my
Mm-hmm.
own writing later. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would say that's about it.
Yeah. I'd say that that's Arthur Miller, right?
Yep.
Um, Arthur Miller was a king of subtext. He never the true story never was the story that you're seeing. It's always there was another narrative there, and pretty much everything he did. I Death of a Salesman. Anyway, my Arthur Miller's. I needed to bone up on it. I didn't get to.
Well, I'm not
Anyway,
a communist, but I do know his
mhm.
writing is like the what people hold up as
Well,
the crown jewel of
yeah.
communist subtext.
Right, right, right. Yeah, he wasn't a big lover of capitalism.
Yeah,
Uh, a lot of these people who are like leading lights that are always pushed and as the best of the best of the best, you go back and you realize that most of them were communists.
yeah,
If not overt communists, they were subvert
yeah. And then I
communists.
think along the waterfront, the Marlon
Uh,
Brando. I don't. But
right.
you always see the
Yeah.
clip of like I was a contender. That guy was like the opposite. His
Yeah.
story was layered with like basically anti-communism, and so he was
Right.
like an
Right.
outcast from Hollywood for that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. People don't understand that blacklist was basically the who's who, and
Yeah,
uh, and they never stop working. I mean, they want this narrative to go on that they were punished, they were put out of the lot, but they never stopped working.
yeah,
They just like picked up pseudonyms and kept going, and eventually they became Hollywood, and that's what we're dealing with now. Um, so I know you seem to have like love of the history and of that kind of era uh, of like 40s and 50s and like 60s. So you very familiar with the blacklisting and things like that, quote
yeah,
unquote blacklisting,
yeah,
uh, which is just mainly that they were forced to do it more quieter.
yeah,
They were forced to go underground. Uh, but that's there's Rageaholic. He's called Razor Fist.
yeah,
Does a did a video on this of how Hollywood has always been read, and By
Yeah,
how the
so
unions and everything.
um, my next book, Noirlem, takes place in
Mhm.
1920s Harlem
Right.
and is very much
Right.
inspired by the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw Razor Fist video and it prompted me to do my own video essay about how
Oh,
in the Harlem Renaissance it was the same exact thing. You had any basically any writer that bad-mouthed communism would be just
yeah.
cast out completely. Um,
Right.
so some of
Right.
like the best writers in the Harlem Renaissance died
Yeah.
penniless and forgotten because
Right.
they were just anti-communist. They weren't all about that.
Well, what I think that one of the reasons why the Harlem Renaissance has kind of been buried by modern Hollywood in history is because uh, it showed how capitalism can raise a people up, and they went from slavery to millionaires in like less than 3 generations. It's just one of the most incredible stories in world history of how a race can raise themselves up. And there's things that are have influenced culture now that came out of the Harlem Renaissance. A lot of the music that became rock and roll and things like that came out of the Renaissance. A lot of uh, the basketball came out of Harlem Renaissance, and things like that. Uh, you know, a lot and boxing, things like that. I mean, they had carved out this niche, this like right in the heart of New York, and that because they were down or looked down upon so much by liberals who had the racism of low expectation, they were left alone to themselves because nobody expected anything out of them, and in that darkness and that shadow, they created this vibrant culture. They had doctors, lawyers, they had scientists, they had they were known from around the world. The people, they left Harlem and they went toward the world. Josephine Baker, was the biggest star in the world. You know, uh, not in America though, but everywhere else in the world, she was huge. Um, but I think it's a really interesting uh, thing for particularly a white boy to, not supposed to, we're not supposed to have interest in these things. But I think
Yeah.
I was, it's interesting that I think I respect black culture more than black culture respects black culture. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, because I'm
Yeah,
I
it's
like
just one
I'm
of those
like
things where it's like, you can't you can't help what you love, you can't help what you're inspired by, and
exactly,
that's
exactly.
where this book came from, is just wanting
Mm-hmm.
to, or as the saying goes,
Mm-hmm.
create new characters. That's what I did. I made a new character. If it whatever happens, happens, but
Yeah.
um I wanted this character to exist, and it does now.
All right.
So,
Cool. And you want to create what you want to see in the world, right?
yeah.
Um. So what do you feel like is your strength in writing?
Um I don't see now I'm trying to
You
like
did.
make sure
You
my
put
my
down building
answers
a character without exposition
yeah.
or dumping.
um yeah, I would say characterization, keeping things tight, um letting people see and read things and kind of develop their own ideas rather than have it
Yeah.
spelled out for them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Eudaimonia number 1 and 2 really has no answers. It's just a book of me as a writer trying to work things out, um,
Right.
trying
Right.
to meditate on certain subjects. So I think what that
There was no
creates
there was
is
no easy answers in that
yeah,
book.
yeah, and because that's just what I think good writing is. Good writing doesn't have
Mm.
answers. So that's the kind
I
of
guess you
tradition
really
I'd like
like
to
the
follow.
lucent then. I guess you really like the lucent then, right?
Okay, now you're gonna make me have to say like whether or not I've read something. I haven't gotten to loosen yet. I'm
You
I'm
haven't?
getting caught up
Okay.
slowly.
All right. Yeah. Okay, okay.
I'm gonna have
Well,
to
let's
wait
just
for
say it's
Lucian
the
2 and get the catch up.
yeah, it's the embodiment of what you just talked about. So when you say without an info dump, just, could you like clarify that?
So, trying to think of how to word this.
Mm-hmm.
Without an info dump, we talking about characters or setting or?
Yeah, yeah. You say you that you're doing that without creating a character in people's minds without info dumping.
Yeah.
Which to me, let me specify what I think that means.
Okay.
Uh, Info dumping is when you tell people who your character is,
Yeah.
or when you have other people telling your audience who your character is, rather than
Okay.
letting the character tell you who they are.
So I'll
Would-
use an example, and in Eudaimonia, like the first book, like the very first book, there are
Mhm.
3 pieces of dialogue in the entire book.
Yeah.
Um, there are no character has a name. The
Right.
characters are simply referred to as the traveler, um, the old man, the woman with the cello, and well, the Harlem Hellfighters. It's kind of a one-off. Um,
Yeah.
so the only things that you know about them as people are the things that you see them do and the descriptions of what they do. You don't know anything about them other than those things, but there's
Yeah.
still a lot that can be inferred or deduced um,
Yeah.
from everything that you see. So
Right.
I'll give an example. The mysterious traveler in Eudaimonia, you see him on the very first page. Um, you see him walk into the bar and say something and leave. You see him in a general store 10 years earlier.
Mhm.
And then Eudaimonia number 2, you see him again in a general store 20 years in the past and halfway across the world. And then you
Yeah.
see him as a literal giant walking over the horizon. Now, there's like a million different ways that that character can be interpreted. But if the
Right.
book were to come out and say, like, oh, he's the devil, then that would erase everything that you have built up in your mind about who this mysterious figure
The
is. You know what I mean?
mythology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one challenge that I had with my book that I'm writing right now, this gentleman right here over my head, the shoulder here, he's the heart of my book, and his journey is like the heart of my book, and I figured out early on that unless I get to understand where he's been and up to this point and get you kind of caught up to him at this point, and I was it was going to necessary it was going to necessitate a info dump,
Hmm.
but so I had to find a way to do that without really without completely hemming him in and not leaving enough room for people to uh, kind of learn who he is. Uh, I c and the only way I could do that was strictly do it from a historical perspective, to where this is where this is like the facts of just the facts, ma'am. And I did that with a narrator, kind of an omniscient narrator, who is basically telling you what you needed to know and just that much. And you don't really inhabit him per se. I don't tell you who he is. I just tell you where he's been and the facts, just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
And that'll leave you room for him to like grow on you or to inhabit the space. But
Yeah.
um, that's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and each different every storytelling you go to is a different challenge. Things like that. Um, so in your case, you were like what not to say, and me in my case is what to say, and it's the challenge is kind of equal, you know.
Yeah. See, I would say the thing that you're describing about, I don't know the character you're referring to, right? But you're saying that there's things in his past that have just like shaped this character that you have now. Um, I would think that the most efficient way of expressing that would be by seeing that character react to what's going on and
Hmm.
maybe even alluding to or referencing to things that happened in the past. And if the reader can just kind of see how whatever that is affected
Yeah.
them, that the version that they come up with in their mind is going to be better than anything you can actually put on the page. So the
Right.
example I would think of
Right.
is, I don't know, do you ever watch Doctor Who?
Yeah. Yeah.
When the
I'm a
show comes
Whovian
back
from
on
way back. Yeah.
when the show comes back on the air, Russell T Davies and Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, they keep referring to like just the Time War
Hmm.
and how utterly broken the Doctor is from having fought in the Time War. And it was
Yeah.
like
Right.
it was such an ingenious piece of writing, right up until the point where another writer actually showed us the Time War. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's it,
Yeah.
okay. And it just sucked all the air out of the room. It just completely loses
Right.
its, because as an audience, our capacity to imagine something on that scale is always going to be superior to whatever you can show us. So
Well, there's a moment in the second episode with Eccleston where where Rose is like kind of imploring him to help what's her name,
yeah,
the sheet of skin, basically.
yeah,
So we'll help her, and he just told her, he's like, everything dies, Rose. And
yeah,
he just walks off, and it was just so calloused and so, you know, and but that was where he was at that moment. He was just at that moment he was the ultimate pragmatist, and people who have like their whole world in, they're pragmatists like that, where they're like, okay, this is just how the world works. Deal with it,
yeah.
move on.
But
And
then over the series, you see him become more, almost heal from that.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
something that no amount of John Hurt, David Tennant, or Matt Smith in a 50th anniversary special can recapture. You know what I mean?
no,
That thing is
mm-mm,
now lost. We've seen the Time War.
yeah,
We can't get that back.
no, no. That's one of those things. You have to ask the question of where are we right now? Where do we want to go? Where have we been? And how much are we going to show of that?
Yeah.
And that is really that's the essence of writing. Um, that's why it kind of drives me crazy. Have you run into this narrative in our group where anybody can write? Have you
No,
heard people like say that? Yeah,
no. But
I've
I mean,
heard
I think anybody can write, but I think anybody can write in the same way that anybody can write who's willing
anybody
to
can
do the
juggle.
work. Yeah.
Anybody can juggle if they do the work.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if they do the practices, they put the time in, anybody can learn to juggle. But saying anybody can write because people can write their signature by the
Yeah.
time they're in fifth grade is not the same thing.
Yeah.
But I see the equation of that, which really annoys me. Um, so, what is the what is your weakness as a writer? You put down action in particular.
Yeah, I think I'm just so character driven that
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of my blind spot for,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I put out this book, I put out this book called How to Die, and
Mm-hmm.
I sent out just as many copies as I did Eudaimonia. It went about the same as any
Yeah.
other campaign.
Yeah.
But the response I got was like nothing. Nobody had anything to say. To this day,
Wow.
there's only one person that I'm certain read this book, because I was on a stream and they mentioned in the chat, hey, are we going to find out this in the next issue? And I was like, okay, that's one person that at least read it. So
Right.
the way,
Right.
indie comics on the internet works, I've basically kind of deduced that people didn't like it, didn't or it just didn't connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because it's like nobody gives negative feedback here. You know what I mean? Nobody says like this
Right.
book sucks. So I just kind of
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
assume from silence that it just didn't really land with people.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it has something to do with the fact that like my writing is just like really character heavy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm more interested in the people doing than I am the doing. So I just
Yeah.
don't spend as much time on creating, exciting action set pieces. I
Right.
think there's
Right.
one in the
Right.
whole book.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. That there is, I have a rule when I do a review of a book. If I review your book and you're a smaller creator, it's because I really liked it and I want to boost it. You know, but I don't give negative reviews to anybody that I can affect their bottom line,
Yeah,
and so I only punch up, as it were. But yeah, if anybody wants to get, if anybody wants my opinions, I can give it privately, but I try not to hurt anybody's bottom line. And I think that's probably why there's not as much open criticism. Plus, people don't want to put a bullseye on their back. If I'm going to get a
yeah,
bullseye on my back, I'm going to go with the bigger creators, And yeah, I've taken flack from bigger creators because of that, but I'd rather have people aiming down at me than me aiming down at somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But yeah, that does it doesn't kind of hurt your ability to get feedback on your projects. The fact that everybody's so mindful of the crowdfunding aspect of it. But yeah, so the next question was what is your favorite book on writing that helped you the most? You put Robert Frost's poems.
yeah. I can't even say it's Robert Frost's like his entire. He has his book of essays,
Oh,
and I
okay.
read it. Um, and I can't even say it's an entire volume or anything. It's really like
Yeah.
one line that kind of changed the way I look at writing. And he
Right.
said something about, and I'll be paraphrasing that,
Mhm.
because obviously my background came from like poetry, um,
Yeah.
and he had this line where he said that your writing should glide along like an ice cube on a hot griddle,
Ah.
riding to its own demise. And I was just like, whoa.
That is poetic. I'll
Yeah,
say that.
well, yeah. Yeah, Robert
One of
Frost
my
is also like a guiding light for any indie creators. It's like
right. Mhm.
because he was basically self-published. You know what I mean? He
Oh,
People rejected a
okay.
lot of his
Yeah.
his work, and he was just like he did what we all do. He put together a
Yeah.
book. He paid somebody to draw an etching of him to put inside the book because he was a bit of an
Mhm.
egomaniac, and he just started selling it and took
Right.
off. So
Yeah, yeah, he's one of the original crowdfunders, I guess,
yeah,
you can
exactly.
say. Um, Nikki Giovanni said something, I when we talk about poets, and their perspectives, but, the poem "Signs" of hers, I look it up sometime. It's a really brilliant, really commentary. Has this line in it that says, "If I can't go where I want to go, then I'll go where the signs point. Though I understand that parallel movement is not lateral. And if I can't feel what I want to feel, then I will feel what I can, understanding that it, that's the reason why man among the mammals knows how to cry."
Mm,
Uh, it's just a really powerful poem. But she
yeah.
said something. Somebody was asking her, because she used a lot of like a colloquial language in her poems and things like that. And they're like, "Well, is it necessary to learn grammar? Is it necessary to learn the rules of things like that?" And she's like, "If you're going to take liberties with the language, then you need to understand what liberties you are taking."
Yeah.
And
It's actually sorry, go ahead.
what's that? Go ahead.
Oh
Go ahead.
no, it's just really funny what happened was I went to University of Oregon and I
Uh-huh.
just started studying literature and I had intended on going into the creative writing program.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm a bit of I put things off a lot. I'm a procrastinator. And so when I
Uh-huh.
went to do it, it's divided into like prose and
Yeah.
poetry. And all of the prose spots had filled up for the next year. And so it
Yeah.
was just like, poetry. And I don't regret it. It was just funny that that's how I got into it. And so what I
Right.
ended up doing was going into the poetry program, but I was writing all of my poems were like individual stories. You know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't like I
Yeah.
was, writing about how a flower petal makes me feel like a woman or anything like that. It was just like,
Right.
yeah, it was just like, here's a story
So
about,
you're in like pretension, the center of the pretension universe
yes.
in a poetry program. You must have run into some nuts.
Yeah. So like when people talk about how, let's use a, I don't use the term SJW. That's just not a term I use because I
Right.
personally don't like to use pejoratives about people because I don't want people to use pejoratives about me. But
Mhm.
when people talk about that, um, I'm like years ahead of the curve. Like, so when
Mhm.
these ideas get introduced that sound completely crazy to me, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that was like 5 years ago when I first heard about
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
So
you're at the Nut Central. You were in
yeah.
Nut Central, so
Well, we finally got
you're
out.
at
I'm up in
you're at the cradle of civilization where all this
yeah.
begins, you know?
We got
Yeah.
out. We escaped, but yeah,
Ah, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, most of what we're dealing with now, had its beginnings in the Pacific Northwest. It's like,
yeah.
where all the hippies went, you know, and to hug the trees, and they brought a lot of the progressive,
Yeah, so when
you
people
know.
were started talking about critical theory, I literally studied a course called like an extensive course on
Yeah.
critical theory like 4 years
Mhm.
ago. And so it
Right,
was like
right.
I had all the answers already.
Well, there's these 2 guys, one of them's name is, I think Lyndon is one of them, and, Bergeron is the other. These 2 guys who were in the academia, and they both escaped from academia. One of 'em was in it when they did this, and another lady from England, and they
Oh, the
realized that,
fake studies?
the fake studies, yeah, or the, fake papers, and
Yeah,
they got them published. And they were trying to prove the point that all these academic papers are the reason why they're shaping our culture with these academic papers, and they're complete speculation. You
yeah,
know, it's just people's opinions about things, and they're citing these papers to change culture, and it's just strictly somebody's opinion about the way they view the world, and they're like shaping like corporate culture. They're shaping advertisement. They're shaping our curriculum in our schools based on these papers. They're just completely subjective. And and the one that blew my mind was when they rewrote Mein Kampf and just put
yeah,
in white cis male
yeah.
instead of Jews, and it got published and praised. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
I don't think that one actually got published. I think that was
Oh,
one
okay.
that got flagged, but they yeah, no, they did do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right, that's the one that got textually, they
Yeah,
flagged. But then they were like, "Just alter it enough, you know, and we'll publish it." So they didn't have a problem with the content, they had a problem with its
yeah,
similarity to Mein Kampf. Uh, you know, you might be plagiarizing Mein Kampf a little bit, but just to suggest
yeah,
that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. Uh,
Yeah, or the one
but
was about, rape culture at dog parks.
dog parks, yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. It was crazy. Uh But yeah, that progressive thought, is actually regressive, you know, because you'll see concepts that they kind the Middle Ages, like, took care of, and you're seeing they're coming back up in in these papers and stuff like this, but it's like because they failed to, pay attention to history, they're repeating it,
Yeah,
but and because they're not paying attention to history, they're basically the same heresies that we've already taken care of as humanity
yeah,
are coming back into culture because of these people's lack of the long view, you know? And,
yeah,
it's really fascinating. It's fascinating.
yeah, I would
Terrifying,
say
but
yeah, the scariest thing is the idea that, like, old ideas can just be polished and advertised as
Package.
being new. Yeah, like as if it's yeah,
Yeah.
that's because it. And I don't think it's anything. I don't think they don't know that.
No.
Um,
Mm-mm.
I think they just assume people are gullible enough to believe it's new.
Yeah. Well, it's like the whole entire thing with the science fiction, like Fahrenheit 451 being banned. You know, and you do know what that book's about, right? You know,
Yeah,
or 1984, and all these like science fiction that called what's happening right now. You know, even the movie Soylent Green. You'll see speculation about recycling people into foodstuffs, you know, and things like that. And it's like, you do know that's the movie Soylent Green, right? You do know that, right?
yeah, it's like hiding the
So
bodies.
exactly. And some of the stuff that we're seeing from, like I saw in Australia, these cells that they're like creating, quote unquote, to quarantine people. And I'm like, that's Nazi Germany all over again, you know. It's it's crazy. It's
Yeah, you know,
crazy.
what was weird is the canary in the coal mine there was the fact that what was it, a decade ago now, that Australia just completely pulled Grand Theft Auto 5 from shelves, and it's just like,
Yeah, right.
that's weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's yeah, they're way further down the road than we are, and so
Yeah,
is Canada. And what we're seeing right now is how the Western values that were eroded over a course of decades in these countries, and that's why they're more susceptible to these overreach and these Byzantine measures that they're taking. So we need to be very mindful.
vigil.
Yeah, and I mean that Second Amendment, man, it matters. It matters when you look at what's going on in Australia. When they come for these people, how are they going to defend themselves? You know,
Yeah,
uh, and and what do? The first thing that somebody gets shot or somebody gets killed, first thing they do is blame the gun.
yeah,
They don't blame the person, and that's very. I mean, you got to pay. It's like you got to pay attention to this. Uh, it's just like early, late, mid to the late 30s, late, Nazi Germany. It's like they're doing the exact same things that Hitler did to take power. The exact same things. They're banning
mm,
the exact same things. They're talking about hate speech and things like that, you know. And and yeah, just got to be very careful. We got to be very careful. Anyway, sorry in the weeds. I do that. We do this. We do this. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Noirlem. I've got a tab here I can share. Um, we'll put the links in the description below uh, when we put this up. And so this is Noirlem, the long and the short of it. Um, is that showing? Okay, that's
yep,
showing. All right. Let me put this. There we go. Is this the trailer?
yes, sir.
All right, we'll go ahead and play that. Wow, that's pretty interesting. What was that piece?
Oh, it was no copyright cello music.
Oh,
But
okay.
that
Well,
was just
that
hours of
works. That works.
yeah, it was just hours of
Uh,
me diving into if there's no copyright on it and I can grab
yeah,
a minute of it.
yeah. Well, it's obviously kind of noir, obviously. Um, got your perks right here. So this is I didn't see a name on your protagonist. What's the name?
His name is Coleman Carmichael. He is named
Okay.
after, um, well, it's a combination of Coleman Hughes, who's just a
Mm-hmm.
current day thinker
Yeah.
that I find very compelling,
Oh,
and
okay.
Freddie Carmichael,
Langston
wide
Hughes.
receiver from the Eagles.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Well, in
Gotcha.
the '80s.
Ah, right. 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 Um, yeah. This watercolor style, that's very unique. Is that something they do with digitally, or is it's actual physical medium?
So when I made the trailer, I actually thought that she was doing like hand watercolors, but no, it's digital.
Wow, it really does look watercolor. It really
Yeah.
does. It's got that texture. There's a texture to watercolor. This is it's very it's not like it's got a definite time and place to it. Very distinctive. It reminds me a lot of Eudaimonia. Yeah, Udame. I'm sorry. You. How do you say it again?
Eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia. Okay, gotcha. Um, Reminds me a lot of it. So same art team. It looks like
It actually isn't.
it isn't
Nope.
really.
One of my
Oh,
favorite
okay.
parts of like the creative process is,
Mm-hmm.
because as a writer, we're
Right.
responsible for everything. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
what I've found is I really like the process of just like finding new artists to work with. Um,
Oh, okay.
so if you want to
Yeah.
know what I'm like as a writer for dialogue, if you go back up that page right there, um,
Mm-hmm.
that's me as a writer right there.
Okay. Okay. So how did you find me, Coleman Carmichael? A lot of precincts in Manhattan. How did you find me, Jay Baldwin? A lot of black folks in Harlem. Well, I'm a detective, and well, then so am I. Okay, and and then there you go. uh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's yeah. I guess he was like accusing him of low expectations. Well, I'm a detective. You're a detective. Why in the world is this like a mystery to you? How in the world I could find you or you could find me?
Yeah. Well, Coleman actually
Um.
isn't a detective. The book is the story of him becoming a detective. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
he
Gotcha.
is just a guy in Harlem that teaches part time. He tutors. He does whatever.
Yeah.
He's out there
Mhm.
grinding. He's just trying to get by. And
Right.
so he
Right.
will, in his free time, Columbia University is actually not that far from Harlem.
Okay.
So
Oh,
he
okay.
would just kind of sneak into classes on Columbia University campus and just
Yeah.
whatever it is, just kind of like sit down and absorb knowledge in any way that he can so that
Right. Right.
he just has a kind of natural talent for deductive reasoning that this
Right.
is the story of him kind of ascending to be, you know,
Yeah.
a detective.
So this is like his Sherlock Holmes origin story, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sherlock Holmes, the books, not the terrible BBC show.
No, no, not. I didn't say Sherlock. I said Sherlock
Yeah, yeah,
Holmes.
yeah.
Anyway, I actually wrote in the Sherlock Holmes universe, so I'm very familiar with Sherlock Holmes, as it were. Um, what most people don't. I guess there's two ways of doing it. You can do it in media res, like Conan Doyle did, where you basically come in on Sherlock Holmes and he's already out with his shingles already out, and he's already like solving cases or involving themselves in these investigations. Or you can start with a guy like creating these skills and then first going out, which is what Bill Finger did with Batman. It's kind of like showing his, him like making himself into this and then going out. Uh, which is what Batman initially was a noir detective story. Hence Detective Comics, hence DC. Most people miss that.
Yeah, this book
But
is heavily inspired. If I had to choose just one, I would say this book is
yeah.
inspired by an Australian murder
Hmm.
mystery show called Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries.
Oh, okay.
And the
Gotcha.
pilot episode is just like she's
Hmm.
this adventuring woman in the 1920s in Australia, and
Yeah.
she kind of
Hmm.
gets involved in a case. And at the end of
Right.
it, or over the course of the story, she kind of develops what ends up becoming an ongoing um, team.
Right.
So you basically see it built from the ground up, which I think
Right.
is
Right.
a great way to introduce a new character.
Yeah. Yeah. Get people in on the ground level. That's definitely a way you can go. That's probably pretty much what my first book is pretty much this team, this group of people, and basically they get thrown together and stuck in this impossible situation, and what happens with these people when they're forced to work together.
Yeah,
I mean, I got people that really should not even be in the same room, or there's going to be bloodshed, and they're forced to work together.
yeah,
So I've always liked that idea. But yeah, origin stories, man, they are such a pain in the butt. I mean, they are such a hurdle. There's so many hurdles that you deal with in origin stories that you don't deal with anywhere else in story. And that's why some people just avoid the origin story and go straight into it.
yeah,
And you could like pick up stuff in flashback later.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's why for this first book,
mhm,
like this first tale, um,
yeah,
I agree with what you're saying about how origin stories are tough. What I did to kind of mitigate that is
yeah,
um, it is 90 pages and it's a serial killer. So
yeah,
it's not just like there's been a murder at a party and we need to figure out who did it. It's more like the character gets introduced into this massive mystery of we got like
right,
four murders and it looks like it's the same person. How can we piece this together? So that way
yeah.
it doesn't feel like you're bogged down in like, you know,
But this is
what
before
what
they
does he
really
like in his
understood
coffee?
serial killer. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is before they really understood serial murder.
yeah,
So there were no FBI teams of
yeah.
like investigate. They didn't
This was
have.
actually at a time when forensic science was really starting to come into its own,
Yeah,
but police as an institution were kind of skeptical of it. Um,
right, right.
so there's a case where, and the second book is going to get into a little bit more like historical stuff.
Hmm.
There was a case right around this time where the police show up at an apartment and there is just um, a torso
Mm,
on the couch, and
yeah.
they find a guy trying to throw away the legs in the bay, and they
Ah.
arrest the guy obviously, but the forensic
Hmm.
scientist shows up and takes one look at the body and is like, "Oh yeah, he didn't kill her." Because he was
Right.
able to look at the body and he was able to instantly tell that she died from some kind of like air toxin. I don't remember exactly
Asphyxia.
what it was. Yeah,
It
like
was a
yeah, he could tell that. Yeah, it was from
Yeah.
something to do with
She.
poison and it was in
I
the
think
air.
she's committed suicide by sticking her head in the oven, and he was just trying to like for whatever reason he was just trying to like dispose of the body because he didn't
Yeah,
want people
she was
knowing.
her landlord, I think.
Right.
And
Oh
the
yeah.
cops were
Right.
like,
Right.
"Wait, what? You want us to let this guy go? Are you kidding me?" And it was like, well, if it had been 5 years earlier, that guy would probably have been hung. But because, so yeah, it was just
Right.
a time of like scientific skepticism.
Yeah, and I think Sherlock Holmes had something to do with that. That was a that not Augustus Dupin. I think that was the name. Um, He was Edgar Allan Poe creation, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and
Mm,
uh, and he was really the first one to do that kind of forensic mindedly detective, and then later on, Arthur Conan Doyle took that, uh, and plus a forensic genius of his acquaintance, Dr. Bell, and created Sherlock Holmes, and then people started saying, "Well, why are you just like beating people up to get them to confess? You know, why aren't you like following the why aren't you following the clues rather than say, oh, this is the guy, let's beat him until he confesses and then hang
yeah.
him for it." And that was pretty much the extent of the Yard's detective work up to that point. Oh, we know you're guilty. We're just gonna beat you until you admit to
Yeah.
being guilty. You know, we're gonna. Oh, you're a witch. We're just gonna drown you.
Yeah.
And oh, if you float, you're a witch, and if you drown, oh well, you were a witch. You weren't a
Yeah.
witch, but you know, what
You're in
does it
heaven
matter at that
anyway.
point? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, yeah. It's a really fascinating time because that was where individuals who the real manhunters, people who were like tracking the deer through the forest, you know, but they were doing an urban environment. You know, it took somebody with real knowledge of people. They called them alienist. Are you
Okay.
familiar with that? Yeah.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, they were called there's people called alienist, and they were um discovering how man, I guess you would call them like followers of aberrant behavior. They were like discovering men that, you know, the strain of mankind that didn't follow any other strain in mankind. You know, they were the psychopaths. They were basically fascinated by psychopathia. You know, and
Mm.
uh, there's a few books out about them. They're called The Alienist. But they were like the first ones that like really did in forensic behavior. You know, they were not the physical clues, but the behavioral scientists, basically. And they were like some of the earlier uh, detectives of renown. You know, uh, there was like a series that was out called The Alienist, but they had a female protagonist, and so I didn't bother because there's no way there would have been a female that anybody would have took seriously
Yeah,
at
right.
that time in history. So immediately I was like, I discounted it because I'm like, no, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Um, it's not misogyny. It's just like I'm not going to watch something is from its very inception twisted outside of reality, you know.
Yeah, I got you.
But anyway, so yep, another sideline. There we go. I tell you what, man, that's why I pre-record these things, you know. Uh, so okay, so the future plans. What I believe. Let me see what you said earlier. That for future plans, you put How to Die number 2,
Hmm.
Eudaimonia 3, Noirlem 2, Untitled Cowboys versus Gangsters. That was interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
so obviously I like, writing in the
yeah.
past, and
Uh-huh.
I thought it would be
There's
really
not a lot
fascinating.
of crossover there, is there?
Well,
Because
there is, at
oh,
least
okay,
temporally speaking, because if you think of the Old West is ending around 1870s, 1880s.
right,
Um,
yeah,
the early gangsters in the United States, or at least the Italian ones, were in Chicago at about 1870s, 1880s. So
oh,
there's an
okay,
opportunity there, I think, to have like aging gunslingers versus
mm,
young gangsters in like the
oh,
Midwest, somewhere around there, in a kind of
right,
like
right,
Cowboys Last Stand kind of a thing. Like maybe one of
like
the
Kansas
aging
City,
gunslingers.
the big cow
Yeah,
towns.
Maybe one of the
Yeah.
agent gunslingers is killed by the mob,
Mm-hmm.
and the posse comes together to avenge him,
Uh,
and then all hell breaks loose in
yeah.
some town. And obviously, the gunslingers can't win. It'll be like their last ride.
Kind of like the Wild Bunch.
Yeah, or Unforgiven.
Yeah. Unforgiven. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, people who lived and traded in violence, meeting the next generation or the new kids on the block.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stetsons versus bowler hats.
Right. Well, I know the Irish mob was in America lot earlier than the Italian mob.
Yeah,
And they were
like
active.
gangs in New York.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because they came here in slavery too, and they were looked down upon, and they kind of like had their own culture in the shadows of people's disdain, uh, which is where a lot of these come from. A lot of those groups come from.
Yep.
Yeah, so I saw that and I was like, oh, I need to ask him about that one. uh, yeah, that sounds like a fascinating idea. I could definitely see the possibilities there. Um, so you have any advice for other writers?
Um, One would be never stop editing. Um, Editing
Mm-hmm.
should be a process that you do entirely throughout the project, whether that
Yeah.
involves getting
Yeah.
other eyes on your work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it should be something that's done continually. When you get art back, does your writing still mesh with what you're seeing? If not, you know, never be above making some changes or putting things around or tightening things up. It should be something
Yeah.
you're always doing.
Right.
Same
Right.
goes for writing. It should be something that you're practicing as regularly as you can. It should be something that you set aside time for more than you just go like, I guess I'll write
Mhm.
right now. Like schedule it, like you would a
Yeah.
job, like you would anything, like a doctor's appointment. You need to work on it. It needs to be something that you do continually if you're going to write. Um,
Right. Right.
if you're working with an artist, you need to be open to interpretation. You need to let their work breathe on the page. It needs to be
Mm-hmm.
collaborative. Um, but at the same time, it's like a continuum. Don't let them take over your work. You need to find the right balance for collaboration. And
Right. Right.
finally, Gemini mailers or GTFO.
Right.
Accept no substitutes.
Gotcha. All right. That's yeah. You wrote down about that. Writing is like any other skill. It's only developed through work. Treat it like seriously as your job. Schedule it. Live by the schedule. Uh, yeah. I I uh, I think Stephen King talked about having a set time a day and a set goal, and because you need your muse needs to know when to show up and know where you're gonna be, if he happens to decide to spread fairy dust,
Mm,
Of course, then again, that's Stephen King, so uh,
mm,
some of his work is really good, and some of it you can tell he just wrote. Some it's really inspired, but I always felt like I really honestly feel like Stephen King's perfect or perfect distances about him is a novella. He is one of the greatest novella writers that has ever walked. But he goes any longer, the longer form he goes, I think the more he loses focus and he kind of meanders around,
mm.
But I think his best ideas are the ones that are just like novella form,
Yeah,
like Shawshank Redemption, Stand by Me, which came from the body, all the, you know, that's a perfect length for him.
yeah.
Um,
Excuse me. Sorry.
but yeah, I agree with that. It's hard to get back into it after you get out of the habit too. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm really struggling right now to try to get back into writing, because I've got I am the writer. I have to write this thing, you know,
Yeah.
and so it's on me, you know. So, uh, yeah, that's difficult. That's difficult. Sometimes you can't wait for the muse to show up. Sometimes you just gotta like call them, you know. You
Yeah.
gotta write stuff, you know. You gotta write. I agree with that. I agree with that. So the usually this is the spot where I'm put on the hot seat. And you have a question for me, or a question that you wish I would have asked that I didn't. Um,
Okay, so last weekend I posted this video about
uh
how, like, a lot of it was like me kind of criticizing myself for not being more
Okay.
involved in the online community.
I read it.
And
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
yeah, the thing that I followed up with is that I realized how many awesome people I've gotten to sit
Mhm.
down and talk to, and they talk about me and interview me and ask me questions, and I don't know
Yeah.
anything about them. So in a couple hours, I'm going to be going on Red Valkyrie. I
Right.
watch Red Valkyrie all the time. I think Shay and Sai are amazing. I don't know anything about, like, what's
Right.
their origin story. Where did they come from? And so
Yeah.
you've talked about mentioning a book. I don't know anything about it. So I would love to
Mhm.
hear, what are you working on? Um,
Mhm.
what are your goals? I don't know how much
Right.
time you have left on the show, but I just would really
uh,
like to know that. But since you've been kind enough
mhm.
to share, your time and
Yeah.
airwaves with me, not
Oh,
actual
sure, no
airwaves.
problem. All right, I appreciate it. Let me also read this. You asked the question, how do we balance community and criticism if we all build each other up when we should? How do we find room to critique each other honestly and genuinely, or do we just ignore those works we didn't like for fear of disrupting the harmony of the ecosystem? Uh, that
Yeah, but we already
quick.
covered that. Talk about you.
We already covered that. We already covered that. Yeah, okay. Well, the project I'm currently working on is called Community Service, and it comes from in the world that I'm writing in. I've got a world Bible and everything. Everything's like, but in this world, there was like a kind of takeover of society that happened in 1970, to where a federal organization was placed over powered people, and there was a individual up to that point who was like this individual here. But he was the first powered person that appeared in America, and the founding fathers, understanding that there was other powered people in the world, basically because he was someone they knew, someone they trusted, wrote him into the Bill of Rights as the person to look over powered people, and he held that position for over 200 years, and and then he was ambushed and injured, crippled, and and they took that moment to like seize the control and create this federal organization to be overpowered people. It's called the FERA, and I got a crest and everything. You know, I mean, I went all the way with it. Uh, but in this world, after that moment in time, to be a powered person in this world, there's three classes: Class A, Class B, Class C. Class A's can only affect themselves. Class B's can affect the people around them. Class C's used to be mistaken for gods. You know, they were in the pantheon and things like that. Uh, and so if you're a Class C, you only have like two options, and that is you either work for the government, or you completely empowered the rest of your life, or you're incarcerated. That's the only three options available to you. And so this is about a group of people who are part of the pilot program to create a third or fourth possibility, which was work off your debt to society and to make it back to society, you know. And but somebody wanted to hijack this program and end that possibility once and for all, and make powered people like scare the public so they can get these things pushed through to make sure that power people are under their thumb forever, essentially. And they're going to use these people and going to make them into the inciting incident for this. And these people are sacrificial lambs, basically. And the guy who finds out about it and chooses to intervene, coming out of 50 or 20 years, 25 years. Wait, hold on. Let me get from 70 to 2020. So that's what, 30 years? 50 years. 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 50 years. Sorry. Get my head straight. So he comes out of 50 years in retirement. Because he's got a lot longer than normal lifespan, but he looks like an old man now. And he's figured out that he still has power, but he kept it under his thumb, or kept it under his hat. He didn't tell anybody. But so he comes out of retirement to try to save these people, and that's the first book. And whether they become a team, he's going with him as the commander or whatever. But he terrifies these people because because up to the point where he was retired, he was the most dangerous expressor on the planet, which is what these are called. They're called expressors. And the idea of him coming out of retirement, the reason why he came out of retirement, the reason why he knew this was happening is because they sent somebody to kill him, to get him out of the way once and for all. Let's make sure that we don't have to deal with him forever. And because he's immortal now, this injury made him mortal. And so here he is. He's mortal for the first time in his existence, and he's about to head into combat for the first time in 50 years for people who are reprobates. They were in jail legitimately. These are not good people. And so this hero's trying to intervene, come out of retirement, come into the situation, intervene on behalf of people who may or may not join him. And he's doing it just because it's the right thing to do.
Nice.
And that's the first. That's community service in a nutshell. But I think I wanted to. The idea, I guess, there was a wound that was created in me the first time I saw Hell Hydra, Captain America utter Hell Hydra. It was a wound that was created to me and in me. A desecration, as it were, that there's a part of me that always wanted to correct that. And so I created he's not Captain America. He's a different temperament from Captain America. It's a lot more practical and a lot more determined than Captain America in some ways. This guy, he's a lot more like, I'll break whatever eggs I have to make the omelet. Captain America had some things that he wouldn't do. This guy doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I wanted to explore that a little bit. I wanted to explore the kind of hero who this is he manipulates these people to get them to do what he needs to do for them to survive. He manipulates them in a lot of ways. And so does that make him a good guy? Does that make him a bad guy? Or does it make he's trying to save their lives, but he's doing things that are probably going to cause damage to them further down the road to do it, And I just love the idea because it's there's no capes involved, but it is superhero. That's my canvas that I want to paint on is the superhero, because that's been my love since I was a little boy. But the ideas, the concepts that I want to bring forward, because some of these people are, one of them's an SJW, a senator's daughter, and the other one's a black power activist, and another one is like a redneck from his mama's basement who did a lot of property damage and is addicted to clicks on YouTube. You got a kid who basically is a Duke, is like Nikola Tesla in as a teenager. With he's that scary,
Yeah.
and then you got like a guy who's like a I guess you would say he's a killing machine uh for the government, and suddenly they find a way to put him on their side, but is he really on their side?
I feel like when you
And
have
so
a coming out of retirement story, it's like
yeah,
he needs to be brutal. Like
yeah,
especially the first time he's back into action,
uh
maybe he's somebody that people underestimate
oh yeah.
until their femur is snapped into.
Well, the person that he's going up against, they stuck uh, a class C in there with him, and it's called the Obsidian Man. And he's kind of like the Sandman, except it's the Sandman manipulated volcanic rock, and he's extremely brutal. He's extremely like practical. This guy basically was told, we'll give you millions of dollars to do this, and we'll leave you alone, and we'll let you, it's basically, we'll give you a get out of jail free card if you do this. And so he's pretty much just there to kill everybody and go about his way. And so that's who he's going to be dealing with. And this is and he's like coming out. He's not only coming out of retirement, but he's come up out of retirement against a monster.
Yeah.
And 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 so he's somebody who I'm really fascinated by him because I keep running into new aspects and I keep running into new facets where he's concerned. At this point, I'm not even sure I entirely understand him because he's over well over 200 years old, and he's actually has this thing where he's died for his country, but his power brought him back, and so this is
Like
somebody
he
who's
just
died for
wakes
his
up and he's
country.
like, "Ah, are you kidding me?"
Yeah, exactly. He's died for his country like 9 times, and but this time is like if they've told him if he dies this time, that's it. That's why they retired him, and so he's like for first time in his life he's facing mortality, and then he's like, but he's very practical individual. He's very like, this is my task. This is the mission. I've never failed a mission, and whatever I have to do to get this done, I'm going to get it done. And what 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 they don't know, and there's only one class D in the whole planet on the planet, and he was like an artificial being that they accidentally created. He's like the Manhattan Project. They created this being, and he's like their Superman of that planet. And so, as far as they know, there's only one Class D. But what they don't know is that when he was injured, they created he has a Class D ability, and he's like kept it under his hat the whole entire time. That
Mm,
and so he's kind of like he's kind of like he's basically he's basically a doomsday device. If he
mm.
loses control of this ability, it's the planet. Okay. so so he's walking in there, he's never used this thing in combat. He's never used that power in combat. And so it's there's a whole lot riding on it. There's a whole lot
Mm.
riding on it. And this is gonna be like um the first significant uprising against the government. And he's gonna be vilified by the press and beloved by the people. And it's gonna be kind of like a Robin Hood thing going on. But
Nice. That sounds
it's
cool.
it's it's work. It works on so many different levels. And I'm excited. I'm working on it. I'm just finished the 11th page. I think my ink's on the 11th page, and so I've got a ways to go.
Yeah.
But and
Yeah. Sounds like you're on the right track.
finances are a little tough.
Yeah.
But I'm fine. It's all coming out of my pocket. I'm a
Yeah,
writer, so I can't do my own art. Uh, at least not to the level that I need for this. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge. But yeah, I've loved comics my entire life, and this is my shot to actually make one.
nice.
And I think we're all doing that. I
Yeah,
think
right.
that's what CG is basically.
Yeah,
Like Charlie's London is a good example of this. All she wanted to do. Nobody had ever done a Charlie Chaplin comic book, and she just thought he needed to be in a comic book form. And she finds this, and everybody's like, nobody's interested in it. Nobody's interested in it. She finds this community, and she manages to get it done. And I got her comic book right over here, and it's good. It's amazing. And
yeah.
that's
If
what
I
this
had a
kid.
nickel for every
That's
time
what
people
it's about.
said, "Why are you trying
Hmm.
to put metered verse
Yeah.
into a comic book?"
Right. Right. Well, why
But
not?
yeah, the feedback I got, kind of spoke for itself.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It really is. And it's unlike anything I've ever read. Or not read, but unlike anything I've ever looked at.
Like I was
Because.
expecting people to find it
Mhm.
weird, but like it's like there's a lot of discussion about what the first epic story was. Um,
Mhm.
but there's an argument to be made that it's Beowulf, um,
Ah. Right.
which Beowulf was a series of poems because
Mhm.
it was conceived in a time where people weren't writing things down, so stories
Right.
had to be told by people who were able to go from place to place and sing it. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
it's where it all started in terms of like massive storytelling.
Uh-huh.
I just,
Yep.
blended it with comics.
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Uh, anyway, I think that's a pretty decent place to stop for the day. You got anything else you want to push um or talk about? This bear in mind this is pre-recorded, so this will be
Yeah.
posted later on.
I am Raiden Radio on YouTube. It's Raiden as in from Mortal Kombat Raiden.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I have a weekly show. I do video essays. I do reviews.
Mhm.
It's a pretty good time. I'm doing shows with Logan from Ibex Universe,
Oh,
and we're
okay.
still in
Cool.
the early stages. We're still kind of finding our groove, but things are
Oh
getting
yeah.
better. Um,
Mhm.
we'll have some guests on next couple weeks. It's a fun time. We talk about
Cool.
everything from fast food to video games to whatever. So
Whatever. Whatever.
come give us
Yeah.
a look and hang out.
Yeah. The link to that will be down below in the description. So just click on that. Anyway, thank you for coming, Josh. I appreciate it. Giving me your time. We finally got this done.
Finally got it hooked
I
up.
was
Yeah.
sick, you're sick, I'm sick, you're sick. We finally got it done. So I appreciate it. This has been The Right Stuff, episode 4, Eudaimonia Comics, and Josh Trank, was it?
Plaque. Plack.
Plaque. I'm sorry. Plaque.
No, that's fine.
You're not. Yeah. Josh Trank is an actual director. Yeah. Anyway.
Yep, that's me. I'm a
Uh,
director.
there you go. There you go. There you go. Anyway, that has been the right stuff. Thank you everyone for showing up. This will be when I post this. Will be there'll be a live chat if you want to come and join me. But that will be. I'm going to try to get this done by tonight, maybe around 8 o'clock. If you're available, then it'd be great to have you. Uh, Anyway, thank you out there in Comicsgate land for paying or to watching this show, and I will catch you next time. Y'all have a good day.